And even more numbers will be out there this week because Jim Chalmers will be making a submission to the Fair Work Commission, pushing to raise the minimum wage in line with inflation. Let's go to Canberra. Joining us live, the Shadow Finance Minister Jane Hume. Jane, good to see you as always. So what number would you like him to settle on here?
Well, as you know, Pete, the Fair Work Commission is an independent body and it will make its decision on the minimum wage, taking into account a huge amount of data that it prepares and also that is submitted to it by interested parties, including the government. The difference here, of course, is that the Labor government, at its last submission, also made a recommendation as to what it wanted to see the minimum wage go to, because it said that it wanted to keep wages in line with inflation and not see real wages go backwards. Now, of course, the Coalition wants to see sustainable growing wages in Australia, but of course we want to make sure that they are backed up by both productivity and economic growth, because quite frankly, unless wages are sustainably supported by productivity with economic growth, it's going to make it harder and harder to keep inflation under control. The Labor government wants minimum wages to go higher as a cost of living measure, but quite frankly, the only way you can sustainably make sure that those higher wages aren't eaten up by inflation is to get inflation under control. And we still have some of the highest inflation in the developed world, and that's because Labor have failed in their quest to bring inflation down faster.
If we are guided by the lower level of the forecast CPI, that will put it somewhere around 3 to 4%, would that be inflationary in your view?
Well, that's not a decision for the Coalition to make. That's a decision for the Fair Work Commission to make.
But in your experience, I mean, you're going through all the numbers. You're going through the numbers.
Well, what we want to see, what we want to see is the government get inflation under control, and it has the power to do that with the levers that it has at its disposal. Its fiscal policy levers, in particular, have been underutilised in the quest to bring inflation down. Instead, they've relinquished all responsibility to the Reserve Bank, and of course the Reserve Bank only has one tool in the shed, and that's interest rates. That's why we've seen 12 interest rate rises under this government in the 20 times that the Reserve Bank has met since Labor came to power. It's raised interest rates 12 times, it's kept them on hold 8 times, but it hasn't brought interest rates down once. And that's because the inflationary pressures are still there and the government isn't doing its fair share of the heavy lifting with its fiscal firepower.
Okay.
The best thing that it could do would be to get its expenditure, those urges to spend, under control. Already we've seen Labor spend an additional $209 billion since the election. And of course, that is inevitably going to have increased inflationary pressures on the economy. Unless we can get that inflation under control, any wage rise is going to be eaten up.
What about when you've got an increase to the minimum wage coupled with tax cuts that start in July 1? Would you have any concerns about inflationary pressures there?
Well, certainly if there is more money available in the economy to spend, you do find that there are inflationary pressures there. The Reserve Bank and the government and the Treasury keep telling us that this is not going to be the case, but the proof of the pudding, of course, is going to be in the eating.
OK. New figures out this morning show the cost of the government's super plan for paid parental leave will actually be double the original estimates, now somewhere in the region of $430 million. That's according to The Australian this morning, Jane. The government will, I presume, confirm this on budget night, but your thoughts on that figure?
Well, I can't understand why they're going to confirm it on budget night, why they haven't come clean about the cost of this policy when it was announced. I mean, let's face it, Katy Gallagher, who announced the policy, is not just the Minister for Women, she's also the Minister for Finance. So it's inconceivable that she doesn't know exactly what this policy costs. We have said that we will support super on paid parental leave. In fact, it was a policy that we took to both the 2010 and 2013 elections. Back then, we were told by the Labor Party that it was a gold-plated option. Well, now they seem to have come to the party, but they haven't come clean on exactly what it's going to cost. While we support the policy, that's certainly not giving the government a blank cheque. $430 billion in its first year alone suggests that over the forwards it might cost around $2 billion. I would be very interested to see if that is the case.